That's building a really, really rich and valuable experience for the marketer. Personally, I feel it's fairly creepy, but that just proceeded for a number of years before people started asking those awkward questions in meetings. It's inevitable. And what's the next step in the recipe? You know, what's the next ingredient? That's an interesting one.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Instrumatic's second in a series of the Voice AI and Marketing podcast. We sincerely appreciate everyone taking the time to be here today. Again, we know that your time is precious, and we always do everything we can to be respectful of that. Our hope and our goal are to keep our conversations informative and hopefully entertaining and at a positive pace. While our core conversation will surround voice AI and the marketing implications, we'll also expand well beyond that to marketing issues at large, new technologies, consumer media consumption, and more. We're thinking of this podcast series as a bit of a fireside chat without a fireplace. And it will be a series of conversations with thought leaders about voice AI. We have a growing list of some pretty amazing guests in coming weeks, as well as today. They'll be from top media companies, advertising agencies, brands, venture capital firms, ad tech, and a lot more. A couple words about the format. We want the conversation to be casual and interactive, so please feel free to use the raise hand feature tool in Zoom when you have a question or a comment, and we'll recognize you and open the microphone for you to speak and pose any questions or comments. Until you do raise your hand to speak, we're going to start with all attendees without the microphone enabled. My name is Andy Watley. I'm the SVP of Global Business Development and Partnerships. My co-host is Stas Tushinsky, CEO and co-founder of Instrumatic, and the guy that signs my checks. And we have an amazing guest today. Welcome to the podcast, Giles Martin, EVP, Client Strategy and Media Operations at Oxford Road, a leading performance audio agency. And he didn't even pay us for that commercial. In this conversation with Giles, we're going to be speaking around the cutting edge of marketing, where Giles is well known for driving marketing science, analytics, behavioral economics, and human science to help brands grow from market launch to hopefully becoming household names. In particular, well, we'll just start right there. Stas, Giles, let's get this party on the road.
Yeah.
Good, great.
Hello, everybody. Hey, Giles. It's so great to have you with us today.
Thank you. Good to be
Yeah.
here.
And by the way, great background. I always wonder how people choose their backgrounds.
Yes, it's an incredibly plush hotel in London where, needless to say, I'm not, unfortunately. But, maybe this summer when the world opens up a little more, maybe I'll go there for a nice spot of afternoon tea or something.
Yeah, I think we're all waiting for that. We're all waiting for the opportunity to travel, including in London.
Indeed.
Great. So our podcast is dedicated to all things voice AI in marketing, in media, because we are now witnessing this, I would say, rather massive innovation and revolution happening in how people interact with media content. And obviously, most of it is ad supported. And so I'd like to start with this question. Actually, it's a question about one of your quotes. So here's the quote. You once said that amid an ocean of data, the real art of our times is not measurement, which really is not much more than data wrangling these days, but knowing what to measure and why. Could you tell us what opportunities does voice AI open for marketers in this regard?
Wow. Yes, interesting one. I feel bad about saying that measurement was not much more than data wrangling these days. So any attribution guys, sorry. Data wrangling obviously takes up about 80% of the time, but the measurement part is becoming a real increasing art. And I think if you go back to the early days of social media or even digital advertising, where we can report on clicks, we can report on page views, we can report on sessions. So we'll start counting those and reporting on those and having conversations about those. Similarly, when social launched, we'll start counting likes, we'll start counting shares, et cetera, et cetera. And that just proceeded for a number of years before people started asking those awkward questions in meetings. It's like, well, what is a like actually worth? And that sort of precipitated a whole new era of sort of evaluating, what metrics matter and why, and, really looking to identify the things that really mattered. I think one of the things that's special about voice is that the indicators that it throws up for marketers are potentially, very important and potentially very valuable. If you are running an ad, like, let's take an Instrumatic type ad. If you're running an ad, you're asking actively a question that is going to indicate whether there was real interest in the product. You're also going to learn whether there's real interest in the category. Depending on how you frame the question, you frame the copy in the ad, there may even be more nuances that you can get just out of a simple one word answer or one answer to a question. And so, I think what voice is opening up there, unlike these other channels when they were born, is that, you're engaging directly with the mind of the consumer, in that moment. And so when they interact with you, they're actually giving you something really, really valuable, like something that really comes from them and is really indicative of their interests and probably their intent as well. And obviously there's a lot you can subsequently do with that data as well. But I just think that's a whole different order of information that voice gives you that just, that wasn't really available, with those other channels.
Yeah, it wasn't really available on other channels. Can you tell us a bit more about that? So what data you are referring to, how the marketers actually use it?
I just mean that, so I'm thinking again of, like, 10 years ago, maybe even, further than that, when advertisers are starting to invest a lot of money in Facebook for the first time. Yeah. You might get an indicator that someone's going to, click, like on some post that you put on social media. Now, what does that really mean? Like, what does that really tell you? Maybe it means the customer is genuinely interested in the brand. Maybe it means they're genuinely a fan of the brand. Maybe there was something in that specific piece of content that really resonated with them, but maybe it was just, something that they did casually, or maybe they were on a mobile device and they did it by mistake. And so, the indicators, you think about, one of the big problems with analytics always is the signal and the noise, right? And so in that type of environment, that type of social environment, there's potentially a lot of noise in the data where you're really trying to understand, well, what's the real signal here? Like, what's the thing that really matters? And what I'm saying about voice having like a different order of data, like a different quality, a different level of data, is like the signal is so strong and the noise is so weak. So it's just like, that's so much clearer and so much more powerful, for marketers to work with in a way.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is you're saying that because people responded verbally, which means that probably they thought a bit about what they're going to say, that means that it's not a random data point. It's a clear signal. Right.
Yeah, much clearer signal, and it may well be indicating like real intent, when we run ads with Instrumatic, we're asking point blank, like, are you interested? Like, that's something that marketers have never had the opportunity to do before. An interaction, with a paid ad or a piece of, owned content, on a social channel, it's just not giving you that same indicator of real intent, of what's really alive for the customer in that moment.
Yeah, you said, you were asking people if they're interested. I'm curious now, do you think it's a big challenge for marketers to lay out this map of responses? Because let's say you ask me if I'm interested in something, and obviously I can say yes I am, or I can say maybe, or what do you mean exactly, or not now, or go away, or even F off. So is that a challenge to keep the conversation natural?
Well, I think I think there's a couple of questions in there, and I think partially you know the answer to this better than I do probably, and I want to hear your opinion too. But keeping the conversation natural, that's obviously the biggest challenge in voice tech generally, and it's the main reason why voice assistants, they're partial assistants at best. Like they don't yet have that full conversational capability to really keep the conversation natural, and they don't have that sort of broader general intelligence, that is going to make assistance and voice integrated tech more valuable overall. We can definitely talk more about that, and I find it a super interesting topic. I think more immediately for marketers, the part of your question about how do we design for all the different possible answers? I mean, that is a challenge for marketers, and I think as is often the way, probably the best way to get started is just to start with the most simple iterations that you can imagine. And and I know when we've had conversations before, we've talked about this theoretical example of 2 for 1 on a coffee. Are you interested?
Mhm.
And if people aren't interested, there's a possibility they might say, oh no, but I could use a Coke, or no, I'm a tea drinker, not to be a British stereotype or anything. And so, if you can plan for sort of 1 or 2 or 3 sort of simple, different options, hopefully sort of fairly broad options where you can capture those responses, then I think, you're teeing up a couple of things. You're teeing up potentially, and I don't know if this tech exists yet, and you guys may have more commentary about this, maybe a second question, which allows you then to get even more information, or you're teeing up, you're teeing up the ability to take what you learn, like, oh no, I'm a tea drinker, and then leverage that with some specifically targeted media, retargeted against that person with a really customized message about tea to them. So I think that there's a lot of value. I think it's a great question. I think that there's a lot of value for marketers in doing that type of anticipation and trying to imagine where the conversation goes. It's really exactly the same type of challenge that marketers have and engineers have when designing Amazon skills, Alexa skills, or Google apps as well. It's like you're trying to anticipate and map out that whole conversation. It's a fiendishly difficult thing to do. But I think starting simply, trying to break it into big chunks of potential response, big channels of response where you can direct them, I think that opens up a lot of opportunities. And again, gives you those really valuable signals.
Well, I have this question. If you had a magic wand, how would you set everything up? I'm referring to what we just discussed. That's not easy to predict and map out all the possible responses to people's responses.
Can you say a little bit more? I'm not exactly sure what you're getting at.
Well, you said that there is a challenge with the tech, and engineers working hard on it. And I'm curious, like in the perfect world, how would you go about it? So I understand that it takes a lot of effort and mentally effort to actually think through, I don't know, 10, 20 directions a conversation can go.
Yeah.
So in the perfect world, I see right now, I see 2 options. Maybe you see more. One option is we have marketers who know exactly what they should do, and it just takes them 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. Or we rather get rid of a human factor and we just have one button, like, I want this, and you, AI, figure it out for me.
I mean, I think it depends a lot on the marketer's situation. I think if you're a marketer who has a lot of different, products, like if you're in the car category, in auto, like if someone expresses an interest either in a car or in your specific brand, like you're going to have a whole series of potential models that may be of interest to them. And if you're smart, I think you can sort of tee up the ad and the copy in a way that will, purposefully and maybe subtly, but tease out like, well, what type of model might be interesting to you? And so then you can plan, responses, say, across 10 different models of cars. Like that's building a really, really rich and valuable experience for the marketer, because you're learning about genuine prospects and the level of intent of those prospects, but also specific specific product interests. And it could go for the same thing if you're a retailer or someone like that, or just, a company that has a lot of different products in its portfolio. Like, I think that's the one way is you can try and steer people into those large kind of buckets of products.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that really answers your question.
Yeah, just one clarification.
Partially, perhaps.
Do you think that marketers can trust AI with producing creatives on the fly?
I think not yet. I mean, this isn't really my area of expertise, but I know that there's a lot of dynamic ad creation technology out there. We're partnering actually with some people who are doing multivariate like ad creation on Facebook right now. Truly AI driven. I mean, when you say that to me, that means I interpret it as something that's truly generative. And I don't know if you guys know, but like AI these days, like it can paint art, it can create songs. I think that a piece of AI was signed to a record label a couple of years ago. Like it is truly generative, it's truly creative, which is sort of a fairly awesome, I mean that in the literal sense, fairly awesome kind of milestone on the journey of AI. So I think, in practice, it is possible. I know that there's AI that generates copy for marketers. I can't remember the names of the company, but the copy generation is pretty automatable now. I think that it's probably not far away, but I wouldn't personally trust it yet. I think it's got a little bit too far to go.
Saw some interesting examples with video of that recently, and it's a good experience, but still not 100% there, I don't think. Here's another dimension worth hearing your thoughts on. Emotions are obviously an important factor contributing to the success of an ad campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no doubt about the fact that triggering a strong emotion in a listener consumer is a most effective way to attract their attention and move them to action.
Mm-hmm.
Quoting your article again, the word emotion even
you
has
guys are embarrassing me.
Motion in it. Yes, right. We mentioned the book, and you get a copy at capture. So the word emotion even has the word motion in it. So capturing the heart and mind will follow, right?
Yep.
Do you think that voice-enabled ads could bring another level or another dimension to emotional engagement at a much higher level?
That's an interesting one. It's not where my thoughts immediately go. Like I don't immediately think of, like voice interaction when I think of emotion, and what's behind this, just for a little bit of context here, like there's the science has been so unequivocal and it's converged so much in the last 20 or 30 years around how humans operate and how we make decisions and how we're influenced. And, some of the sort of landmark publications that have really resonated with the marketing community, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman and Nudge by Richard Thaler, like the behavioral economic stuff, and a lot of other more sort of biology and sort of social psychology focused books as well. But we make decisions in a very irrational way. We think we're incredibly rational. We're really not. And it's really our emotions and our subconscious mind that is making the decisions for us. And so that's why, the marketers that are paying attention, you've seen this glut of really emotional type ads over the past 10 years or so that marketers have really been paying attention to this. You think about, at least in the UK, it's had it's so well known now because it's spawned a whole new generation of ads, the John Lewis Christmas ads, just changed advertising in the UK because they've been so effective with their emotional connections. But in the US, Skype, Microsoft, Budweiser, P&G, the Mums campaign for the Olympics, like some really famous campaigns that have been so emotionally engaging. And so, that's typically what I think of when I think about, how do you really engage emotions in marketing and really build brands. I think it's harder for voice in a way, but thinking about how, we interact with ads with Instramatic, for example, like, if if I'm asked, do I want a coffee? And I say, no, I'm a tea drinker. And then you come back to me and you offer me a tea ad, that is gonna have more relevance to me. And it may even resonate with me emotionally. I mean, to go even further, let's say that you're able to capture much more detailed information. Like, no, if I say no, I don't want a coffee, like a regular black coffee or something, but I'd love a mocha latte frappuccino with extra ice or whatever it might be. Like, that's something that's probably very personal to me, right? That really, like, that's how I take my coffee. That's how I like my coffee. Like, if I'm at work and I've got a buddy at work and they're going to Starbucks, they know to get me a mocha latte frappuccino. So I'm not a Starbucks guy, so I'm really on the seat of my pants here. But they know to get you that coffee because that's the coffee you like, right? And so you feel some kind of connection with that person that, hey, they know me well enough to, like, they know that's the coffee I like. And I think if you could leverage that voice tech in a way where you're able to capture more detailed information like that, and then you can come back to them, maybe not immediately, because maybe it would seem a bit too creepy immediately, but later on at some point you say, hey, do you want a 2-for-1 offer on mocha latte frappuccinos with extra ice? And then I think you have the real opportunity to have someone respond in that sort of authentic emotional way of like, oh, this computer commercial really knows me. I mean, there's always that element of like, is this creepy? But like, I think that, there's a real potential for like creating emotional resonance in that way, in terms of like, and again, it's a little weird to be talking about it, but like really having people feel understood, like they're really seen.
Do you think people would think it's creepy if in ad number 1, we deliver an ad and we say something about coffee and the person says, no, I don't like coffee. No, thanks. Matter of fact, I hate coffee. And then a couple days later, we deliver an ad that says, hey, we know you don't like coffee. How'd you like to check out our tea? Do you think that's in any level creepy?
I mean, personally, I feel it's fairly creepy, but I think that the point is that, and I think certainly, other people will, and other people, will probably be more accepting of it. But I mean, whether it's creepy or not, I think it's inevitable. I think, it's the way the industry's going, the digital display, like it's already there. It's already capturing as much data as we possibly can about you and spitting it back to you in ways that are relevant and resonant. All you're really talking about is shifting that into a voice environment. And yeah, it's unfamiliar, and that makes it a bit creepy because we're often resistant to things that are unfamiliar and things we don't understand. But I think that people are just, over time, I mean, they're going to get used to it because it's coming.
Yeah. So
it's really interesting, you guys. Yeah, sorry, Andy, you're talking about AI remembering your preferences is being creepy. I had a very interesting experience just recently. So I visited this Japanese restaurant, which I haven't visited since the lockdown. So more than a year. And I came in to pick up my food. Mm-hmm. And the chef recognized me and he said, hey, Stan, picking up your food. and it's been, I mean, just imagine how many people he sees every day, yeah. Right? And he remembered my name. And it was, you can call it creepy, but because it was a real human being, it felt impressive.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting that how polarized this, this feeling about it can be if you know this is a machine or if it's a person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and thanks for sharing that example. I mean, when a human does it to you in a context like that, like, I mean, we talk about emotional resonance, like it may not be the most powerful emotional resonance, but I mean, it creates it, right? It's like, oh, it's nice, right? It's like, that guy remembered my name. Like it connects with you. I think that this goes back to, sort of where we started, where we're talking about how voice tech generally just isn't that intelligent yet. Like we talk about intelligent assistants, and the reality is they're not that intelligent yet. And we talked a bit about this the other day, about how like all the AI that's come in the last 10 to 20 years has been built on the foundation of neural networks. And neural networks is just not a very good technology for language, because language is so complicated and it's so unpredictable and it's so personal. Everyone uses it in different ways. And it's just that type of modeling is not good for those types of problems. And there's a whole industry of incredibly scarily smart people working on whole new AI technologies. We talked a bit about cognitive architecture the other day. Like, they're working to make these assistants like genuinely intelligent. And as that genuine intelligent comes and we move towards general AI, it's just going to be like that assistant is going to become a real assistant, and it's going to be someone like, hey, what am I doing, later today? And do I have time to get to Starbucks between these meetings? And it's going to become part of our lives. And as it becomes part of our lives, just inevitably, we're going to get used to it. And it's going to be like all those types of things we're talking about are going to be less and less creepy, because it's like, oh, hey, do you want this, most iced frappuccino or whatever? Or it's like, no, we're going to be used to it, and we're going to be, yeah, thanks, that's actually relevant. And I think that it's just people will become comfortable with it.
Or another example, you're entering an elevator and it tells you, hey, Giles, 5th floor, right?
Right. Right.
If it knows what you're having for lunch, you might get concerned.
Yes, maybe before you do.
Kind of on the offshoot of the emotional thing, do you agree with or resonate to the idea that, and I think there's been some studies on this, but no, there have been, that the notion of if a person says something out loud, that they align their behaviors with what they said they would do. And do you think maybe there's some pretty powerful marketing implications from that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that what you're referring to, I think, is one of Robert Cialdini's 6 principles of persuasion.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly the names of all the 6 principles that he gives them, but the idea is exactly what you said. It's like, if I say something out loud, if I'm committing to something in some way, then if later, you circle up with me and you ask me the same type of thing, like if I say, yeah, I'll help you, run your campaign for, local mayor, like if later on you or someone says to me, hey, will you help with Andy's campaign, running for mayor? It's like the fact that I've already said it makes it much more likely that I'm going to participate. So yes, it's a big implication for marketers. If you can get people to express an interest, in your category or in your product or in one of your products, that definitely, at least according to the theory, like that will definitely increase your likelihood of buying in future. And that will make them, hot prospects for targeting. And that's really of value to marketers for sure.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I was really looking forward to this episode is because I knew that this one is not just going to be about marketing theory, but actually we're going to discuss practice, because Giles, with his team at Oxford Road, they actually ran several campaigns, voice-enabled campaigns, and I really wanted Giles to share their experience with them and what they learned and how they think about voice ads now.
Yeah, it was a really good experience, and I'm looking forward to doing more. I think we all are. I think that generally we found that the ads worked well. They drove a lot of interactions, and they drove a lot of traffic to our clients' sites, and that was a really positive result. On one client, one of the better success stories with it was one of our B2B clients, which might be interesting to people if you're thinking this is only something that works with consumers. Like we tested it in B2B as well, and it worked well there. And what was actually interesting about that, while I think of it, is we use this type of 2-tier technology that you were referring to, we've been talking about with regard to the coffee, and then coming back with a second response about tea. In this case, our client was a enterprise software provider, and most of their customers come from people who use a very, very, very common accounting software for small businesses. And so it's really of interest to them, of our client, to find users of this accounting software and give messages to them. And so to, once we were getting a read on the campaign, to take it up a level, we sort of backed it up a bit. And then we went after people to say, hey, do you use this type of accounting software? Which was just a really great way for us to qualify the audience that is our hottest prospects. And then what we did was we took that audience, and then we went back to that audience with, another voice, enabled ad asking, great, we know you're a user, it might be time for you to upgrade. Like if your business is growing, significantly, like it probably can't meet your needs anymore. Are you interested in, having a free demo or something like that? And that worked well for us. And it drove not just traffic to the top of the funnel, but it also drove, a decent amount of leads for the amount of money we invested. And also a decent amount of those leads were qualified, and approved like lower down the sales funnel by their sales team. So, that speaks to the quality of the leads too. And again, I think that's one of the areas where voice can be meaningful, in that you've expressed intent and interest, like Andy was just asking about. And you've sort of pre-qualified yourself, right? And so the leads that you're getting into that funnel, like that's high quality traffic. And so, I mean, I think that's a big win and a learning from the campaign. I mean, perhaps an obvious one, and certainly a big strength for you guys to be able to offer that type of quality of customers coming into the funnel.
Did you see a difference in engagement rates between the first dialogue with the consumer and then the second, this continuous conversation, like, hey, I remember, you're either using or not using this competitor product. Did you see any differences in the engagement rate? So does this approach actually work? Well, I know the answer, but I want to get your opinion on this.
I don't remember specifically the difference in engagement rates between tier 1 and tier 2. I mean, and you should tell me, and I'm very curious to know. I'm guessing that in tier 2, once you've already sort of pre-qualified people, you would expect even higher levels of engagement. Is that what you typically see, or?
Yeah, what we typically see is that when you come back with the second message referencing the original conversation, on average, you see 3 to 4 times higher engagement.
Yeah, okay. That's a big difference. Yeah. So that explains a lot probably then about like why that type of approach works so well for us, in that we got, that real qualified customer and that real level of interest. We did that with our B2B client. With like the other tests we did were more on the B2C side, and it was more of a straightforward implementation. Just asking if people have, an interest and sending them a link to their device. Now having sort of learned a bit more and talking with you guys, I am a little bit regretful that, we didn't set up that second tier, of response. But there may be more we could have done to get more juice out of the campaign. But again, I mean, that drove a lot of traffic to the site. I think we had more difficulty converting that traffic than we did, in the other example I gave. And I don't really have a great hypothesis for why right now, I'm afraid. But I mean, certainly, good top funnel activity, all round. So that's definitely something that marketers can take away. And again, it depends what your goals are. Like if you're really a performance focused marketer, which, most of our clients are, obviously, the top funnel stuff may not matter so much. And it would, given the conversation we're having, make a lot more sense probably to design that second tier of conversation and really anticipate all those potential different responses like we talked about, so you can drive that next level of engagement, in a second round. But if you're a brand marketer, just getting people interacting with your brand and getting people to express an interest in the brand or the category, I mean, and driving traffic to the site, like that may be, 2 or 3 wins right there.
Yeah.
So I think it can be helpful, to marketers with all different kinds of goals.
I'm not sure if you guys did this, or I don't think I discussed it with any of your people, but be curious to look at a subset of data of top of funnel consumers that were driven by a standard audio ad versus the conversion rate versus those that came from a voice enabled conversational dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, we haven't done that, but gosh, if you follow up with me, maybe we've got the data. It'll be interesting to be able to
Yeah, I
look
think
at
you
the
do. It would be
difference.
interesting to check into that. So I
Yeah,
think I will follow up on that.
yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody who's listening live that you can send us a question either by chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll cue you in and you can ask a question, ask Giles a question. Giles, do you think there are some particular brand categories that can win the most from this technology right now?
I mean, I think it depends what technology we're talking about, because obviously there's different aspects of voice technology. You guys obviously are very specialist in the sort of interactive ad space right now. It's an exciting space for marketers, and at the same time, there's a lot of other voice opportunities for marketers. I think, thinking broadly, there are certain things that just obviously naturally lend themselves to voice types of engagements and interactions. I mean, auto is the obvious place, and that's why all the auto manufacturers are investing so heavily in voice technology, because you want to keep everything else free while you're driving the car. And so that's an obvious area, and those guys are already all over that. I think the Food Network released a really good voice app, which I think again makes a ton of sense. I think it was not pure voice; it was like voice and display, on Alexa. But again, it's something where you're busy with your hands, you're busy focusing and concentrating on something else, but it just naturally lends itself to, you can have a verbal interaction, you can have an audio interaction, and get guidance on what's the next step in the recipe, what's the next ingredient. So there are some obvious use cases, there are some obvious categories that really lend themselves to voice, I think. I think a lot of the, and also, there's some really good B2B ones as well. Like I've heard, people who have very technical kind of jobs, let's say you're replacing parts on like some giant industrial machine, like it's very technical. It may be only something that you do, rarely when there's some kind of problem. Like it might be dangerous or difficult. Let's say you're at the top of a, wind farm, like, windmill, like it might be very dangerous or difficult to do that. You can't just stop and look at a manual, but like there are those types of B2B applications where, you can get the information you need through audio. You can have an interactive conversation, you get guidance. Like I think that there are a lot of uses there in B2B too. I think what's interesting and challenging for marketers is, how do they find a way into this space? Because it's just, it's coming, and if you don't learn now, then you're going to be behind the curve moving forwards. And one of my favorites that I heard out, and I just wanted to share with you guys in case you didn't hear about it, but the brand Moon Pie, they're quite famous for having a Twitter feed that is, what's the word? Charismatic, something like that. Very, very interesting Twitter feed, like lots of sort of slightly wacky humor, lots of character. And when COVID hit, they created a voice app that was, like, hey, Moon Pie is going to be your roommate because you're stuck at home alone, and you need someone to talk to and some conversation. And so they made this app, and they actually, they had a bunch of people, like, I don't know if it was the creative agency or internally, like brainstorm, like, hey, if I'm sitting like in my college room with my slightly wacky roommate, like what kind of conversations are we going to have? Like what sort of things are we going to talk about? And what kind of things are they going to say back? Getting again on that whole point of like anticipating the conversation, right? It's one of the big challenges. And they did a really great job of that. And it's a brand that has really no obvious link or business, being in the voice space. But,
Right.
you talk about how marketers can create emotional connection. Like, okay, maybe it's only your most passionate customers that are going to do that. Like maybe it's hard to get a lot of reach and a lot of scale, but if you can even get some distribution, and it is distribution among customers who are favorable towards the brand. Like, wow, that is like the type of emotional connection when you're talking about that earlier, that again, like that's unprecedented from any other type of emotional connection you can really have with a brand. Like it's different from like seeing the P&G Mom's Olympic ad and like having a tear come to your eye. Like that's different. Like this is a more personal, more engaging. You can direct the conversation. It's kind of like the brand's your friend. I mean, they're really getting at that space. And I just find that's super interesting and, you know, really sort of indicative of the type of things that brands should be paying attention to.
Yeah, that's exactly, that nails it, and had some pretty interesting insights today. We save a question, our last question for our, it's kind of our zinger, you know, it's to get that personal reveal, the big reveal moment.
Uh-oh.
And we ask everybody this, so we didn't tell you we were going to ask you this, so I don't think. So what have you learned about yourself during lockdown? What?
Oh gosh.
Oh, yeah, speaking of wacky roommate.
That you love moon pies. No.
Yes, that's right. I've eaten 100,000 moon pies and I put on 70 pounds. What have I learned about myself? I don't know, that I'm a grumpy old so-and-so, that I really don't, it's not good for me to be locked, you know, in isolation, you know, from other humans. You know, spending time with myself just generally not a good idea, I find. I prefer being in an office. I prefer being around people. And,
or in a London hotel.
Sorry?
Or in a good London hotel.
Yeah, that's right. So I don't know if that's a satisfactory answer. That's what I got for now.
Yeah, I think that's somewhat similar. Well, hey, your insights have been fabulous today. We really appreciate having you. You've got some interesting perspectives, and you've done an awful lot at Oxford Road driving strategy. So we're really appreciative of having you here to share your thoughts. So thank you very much, Giles.
Absolutely, really enjoyed it. Thank you guys.
And also to the audience, thank you all very much for being here today. I've enjoyed the conversation. It's been interesting. Next go around, I believe we're going to have some VCs, some venture capitalists, and we'll be posting the specific date, time, and topic and guests on LinkedIn. Also, be sure to check out our and join, if you will, our Voice AI marketing group on LinkedIn. We'd love to have you and have you there. And again, thanks very much to everybody. We've used up all of our time, so appreciate you all coming, and hope you come again and share this with others. And the commercial at the end says, "The show presented by Instrumatic, the Voice AI leaders." Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Charles.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.